In the history of warfare, there are crimes that are punished and crimes that are erased. What happened in Manchuria between 1935 and 1945 was not just a war crime. It was an industrial enterprise. Japan built a facility the size of a city. It had power plants, railways, laboratories, and a prison population that was never meant to leave. Officially, it was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. Unofficially, it was Unit 731, a place where doctors violated the Hippocratic Oath on a scale that defies imagination. They froze people alive to study frostbite. They engineered bombs to spread the plague. They turned human beings into raw data. But the most terrifying part of the story isn't what happened inside the walls. It's what happened when the war ended. The monsters didn't go to prison. They went to work. To understand the scale of Unit 731, you have to look at the logistics. This wasn't a hidden basement. It was a 6-square-kilometer complex located in the Pingfang district of Harbin, China. It was surrounded by a moat and high walls, and it was serviced by a special railway line. Trains arrived at night. The cargo was listed as special transfer. These were the prisoners: Chinese civilians, Russian soldiers, political dissidents. Once they crossed the perimeter, they ceased to be human. The guards, many of whom were recruited from the Youth Corps, teenagers indoctrinated by the state, were given specific instructions. They were told the prisoners were not people. They were maruta, logs. This linguistic dehumanization was crucial. You don't operate on a person, you process a log. It turned torture into accounting. The prisoners were fed well and kept healthy, not out of kindness, but for the same reason a scientist calibrates a microscope. To get accurate data, the test subjects had to be in prime physical condition before they were destroyed. And the man directing this destruction was Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii. Shiro Ishii was a prodigy, a microbiologist, a rising star in Japan's medical elite. While the rest of the world looked at the 1925 Geneva Protocol, which banned biological weapons, as a treaty, Ishii looked at it as an advertisement. His logic was cold and simple. If the great powers banned these weapons, it must be because they are effective. He successfully pitched this idea to the Japanese High Command. He argued that Japan, an island nation with limited natural resources, needed a weapon that was cheap to produce, but infinite in its lethality: bacteria. Ishii was a master showman. To secure funding, he famously demonstrated a water filtration device in front of the emperor. He urinated into the machine and then drank the purified water. It was a stunt, but it worked. He got his funding. And he recruited the best minds from Tokyo University and Kyoto University. These weren't fringe lunatics. They were the academic elite. And inside Unit 731, they were given unlimited resources and zero ethical constraints. The experiments covered every aspect of military medicine. But one specific study highlights the cruelty of their methodology: the Frostbite labs. Japan was preparing for a war against the Soviet Union in the freezing plains of Siberia. They needed to know exactly how the human body fails in the cold. Led by physiologist Hisato Yoshimura, prisoners were taken outside in temperatures as low as -40 degrees. Their arms were doused in water and exposed to artificial wind from giant fans. They stood there until their limbs froze solid. Yoshimura determined that a limb was ready for testing by striking it with a short stick. If it sounded like a dull thud, it wasn't frozen enough. If it sounded like a hard wooden crack, like a maruta, a log, it was ready. The subjects were then dragged inside. Doctors tested various methods of rewarming: hot water, open fire, massage. They watched as flesh rotted and bones detached. Through this torture, they discovered that the best way to treat frostbite was immersion in water between 37 and 40 degrees Celsius. This discovery is still the standard medical treatment today. Every time a mountain climber is saved from frostbite, they are benefiting from data harvested in a torture chamber. But Ishii's ultimate goal wasn't medicine. It was offense. He wanted to weaponize the bubonic plague. His team bred millions of plague-infected fleas, but they faced an engineering problem: delivery. If they dropped the fleas in a standard steel bomb, the heat from the explosion killed the bacteria instantly. If they dropped them from too high, the air pressure killed the fleas. Ishii needed a casing that was aerodynamic but fragile, something that wouldn't explode but shatter. The solution was the Uji bomb. It wasn't made of metal. It was made of porcelain, ceramic. It looked like a large vase with fins. When the porcelain casing hit the ground, it cracked open instantly. It created no heat. It simply released thousands of infected fleas into the air alive. They tested these on innocent populations. Japanese planes dropped ceramic bombs over Chinese cities like Ningbo and Chengde. They dropped plague-infested wheat and cotton. Outbreaks followed. Tens of thousands of civilians died. For Ishii, these weren't massacres. They were field tests. By 1945, the Soviet Union invaded Manchuria. Unit 731 went into immediate erasure mode. The order from Tokyo was clear: destroy everything, return to Japan, take the secret to the grave. The facility was blown up. The remaining prisoners, the ones who hadn't died yet, were executed by cyanide or machine gun. Their bodies were burned to ash and dumped in the Songhua River. The scientists removed their uniforms, put on civilian clothes, and vanished into the chaos. Shiro Ishii faked his own death. He held a funeral for himself in his hometown. But he wasn't dead. He was hiding, waiting for the Americans. He knew he possessed the only commodity that could buy his life: data. When the United States occupation forces arrived, they found Ishii. The Soviets demanded he be handed over for trial. But American intelligence officers, specifically Lieutenant Colonel Murray Sanders, saw an opportunity. The Cold War was beginning. The US feared the Soviets were ahead in biological warfare. Ishii made them an offer. He would hand over 8,000 slides of microscopic tissue samples. He would give them the frostbite data, the plague data, the anthrax data, but only if the United States granted full immunity. In 1949, the Soviet Union held the Khabarovsk trials. They prosecuted 12 members of Unit 731. They released transcripts of the torture. The world was horrified. But the United States government dismissed the trials as, quote, communist propaganda. Behind closed doors, the deal was signed. General Douglas MacArthur confirmed it. The United States secured the data. Shiro Ishii walked free. Not a single senior member of Unit 731 was prosecuted by the West. Justice was traded for science. The horror isn't just that they escaped, it's that they thrived. Unit 731's alumni didn't hide in the shadows. They became the pillars of modern Japan. They became deans of medical schools, the governor of Tokyo, the head of the Japanese Olympic Committee. Masaji Kitano, The man who commanded the unit while Ishii was away became the head of the Green Cross, a major pharmaceutical company. For decades, the Japanese medical establishment was led by men who had learned their trade by dissecting living prisoners. The blood banks they built, the vaccines they sold, it was all rooted in Pingfang. Shiro Ishii died of throat cancer in 1959. He died in his home, a free man. He never spent a day in prison.